this?
I do. I'll go run and get it.
Okay, go ahead. We'll wait. We'll wait. I just want to open with a few intentional prayers. The theme of our main moment is the unity of humanity. And what we really want to focus on tonight isn't my ideas of the unity of humanity becoming, oneness, being in oneness. I really want to focus on what the Buddha had to say about this. So I found some nice passages from the sutras, from the words of the Buddha. And before we start, really, let's just take a few minutes just to gather ourselves intentionally so we can think about oneness in our heart. That the Buddha, when he attained his enlightenment, he said, what I have found is wondrous, virtuous, peaceful, inconceivable, almost unspeakable. After he attained, after 6 years of that lifetime of really hard practice, very ascetic, very extreme in that direction, and then finally finding his enlightenment through the middle way, which was not too much indulgence in the material world. Yes, sometimes we need food. For a while he had only eaten a grain of rice, very, very, very ascetic. And he realized when he stopped doing that, he realized, if I keep doing this, I'm going to die and I'm going to lose this body. And this body's precious. We need this body to attain insight. And then he remembered his time in the palace as a prince, and he thought, but that's too much indulgence. There's too much focus on the pleasure there of music and song and women and politics and everything you can imagine that was going on in the kingdom in India 2,600 years ago. Lots of feudal fights, lots of favoritisms. And he thought that's also, there's no lasting peace and nirvana and bliss in that. So he was kind of looking at his own experience coming from these two extremes of having been born as a prince into very good conditions in one way, because he was educated. He was taught to really, learn to read and write and study, which in India still today, many people don't know how to do. So he had very good rebirth into that family, but he got really sick of it. He really felt like that it wasn't really lasting happiness. And then when he went off and he went on his ascetic quest, he studied with a few great masters at the time, these yogis, who taught these very high kind of what are called siddhis, attainments of being able to forego all kinds of physical pain, attaining very blissful, high meditative states, many things. But Buddha came, before he attained Buddhahood, when he was still Siddhartha, he came down from those states. So he also thought that's impermanent too. So there must be something more. And that's when he went and sought, I've got to find it for myself. And in the end, he came up with his Madhyamaka philosophy, which is the middle way, not going between extremes. And he also saw a deep insight into the nature of reality, which is everything that lives has Buddha nature, which means it has an essence of pure primordial consciousness, the radiant nature of the primordially awake mind. So that consciousness that's awake, that knows, that interacts with its environment, but not everything has the same kind of consciousness. But he said everything that lives and has consciousness is in the same nature of Buddha nature, has a nature of purity. It might not know that. It's going to interact with its world and environment according to the karma that it's created, according to the form of life it's taken. It's going to have different ways of understanding its experiences, but still that Buddha nature is present because consciousness itself is pure. So we don't always act with pure intention, pure motivation, pure dedication. We don't always act with a recognition of its purity, but it doesn't change the fact that it is pure. So tonight in our session, we want to really think about how can we continue to cultivate that awareness, that basic awareness that is our primordial pure Buddha nature. Or as a great teacher, Mingyur Rinpoche's teacher, Tulku Urgyen, said when he was alive teaching in his last life. We need to come to recognize the primordial purity of the radiant void. The radiant void just means the possibility of emptiness, how things constantly come together, they come apart, they come together in so many different ways. But within that, as human beings, when the Buddha attained, he said, oh, the human birth is the most precious, because in the God's realms, they're too busy in bliss. They don't think about it ever ending. In the Asura realm, they're kind of like competitive, prideful politicians who are always arguing and jealous of each other, and they never recognize what a great opportunity they have to realize their true nature. And then, of course, in the lower realms, there's so much suffering, there's almost no time. Or for animals, they don't really have the capacity. Like animals are very good and sweet, and we can feel that they have Buddha nature, but they can't really necessarily understand what's happening to them. They can't ask questions, even when they need help, when they're sick. And so that realm, the hell realms, we can think of as like constant misery, constant suffering, never having the capacity to come out of that kind of pain, to be able to think about what's going on. And we know that sometimes when we've been in pain, that it's very difficult to think clearly. So we could think of people with addictions like that. All these realms are just states of consciousness, really. It's just really how the mind's creating its own experience. And that's why karma is so important. And then the hungry ghost realm, again, we can think of beings who can't even get the basics of food or water or a shelter. A hungry ghost could also be someone who's constantly going under lust, is only attracted to like material gratification, doesn't know that there's a deeper nature of awareness, consciousness, of clean, clear happiness. So Buddha said, but humans, they can kind of experience everything. So the human birth is great. And the precious human birth is even better. The precious one means we have capacity. We've come in contact with the Buddha's teaching, the Dharma. We have enough suffering from our own experience in life that we see. We don't want that. We'd like to transcend that, and at least be able to meet painful or difficult experiences without adding suffering on top of them. And we have faculty of kind of a mind and intelligence where we can actually listen to the Dharma, practice it through our own awareness, and then come to see that we do benefit. So, and because he himself attained Buddhahood starting off as a human being. So he said, actually human beings are so wonderfully capable of recognizing their Buddha nature. Although all life forms have Buddha nature, human life form is the best life form because it has the greatest opportunity of any of them to really recognize and realize. So first we want to talk about awareness as recognition, and then we want to talk about study, using our intelligence, our exploration, our meditation, listening to the sutras that I'm going to read after. And then we want to talk about the next thing that has to happen, which is realization. How do we really say, yes, oh yeah, great. And I see there's a glimpse of a little Buddha in there. My Buddha seed is growing. I'm watering it. It's sprouting up. Okay, so we also need to accept that we have that. So that's really important. If we constantly doubt, oh, I don't know, maybe she has that because she has the haircut and she has the robes. It has nothing to do with that. Nothing at all. So it has only to do with our mind, quality of our mind, and how we're continuing to cultivate the quality of our mind. So that's just awareness. So that's good news because we can all do it. We've all been doing it for quite a long time, and we'll continue doing it. So just let's take a couple of minutes now and set our intention for our time to really bring confidence, rejoicing in our Buddha nature. We'll do a little meditation, just breathing in and breathing out, sitting up nice and comfortably. And in front of you, maybe about an arm's length at the stretch of your arm out and the size of your thumb right between your eyebrows, you can visualize your root guru, if you have a root guru, made out of light. And if you don't have a root guru, you can use the Buddha, or you can use His Holiness the Dalai Lama, whomever you feel represents the enlightened mind. And just visualize them completely sitting very bright, made out of light, like a rainbow, clear, very joyful, very happy to come and spend time because you're requesting them to, blessing your mind stream. Because they themselves have realized the nature of mind, they have the qualities to be able to bless our mind stream from a higher consciousness. Someone asked me yesterday, how does that work, Dasel? How do the blessings come from the Buddha or from the gurus or from the bodhisattvas? And those names, guru, Buddha, bodhisattva, they're only names to talk about states of consciousness, of higher consciousness that is awakened and realized its true nature. And that consciousness can go everywhere. It's non-material, non-physical. It pervades everything like space. And it's never separated from our own. So we can plug into that. You can think of it as like electricity. Electricity was still there before Benjamin Franklin flew his kite, but no one could recognize it because they didn't have proof of its existence, but it was still in existence long before humanity learned how to contain it and use it. And the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the gurus are exactly that way. So you can see your guru sitting on a little throne with 8 lions and the 4 corners supporting it. And on top of the throne, a beautiful lotus and a sun and a moon disk lying horizontally. And on top of those, seated your guru or the Buddha, Shakyamuni. The lions on the corners represent fearlessness. So the Buddha promised all of the followers of the Dharma, those in the Sangha, that he will protect them and always be keeping them on the right path. And so we take trust and confidence in that promise from the Buddha, and the snow lions represent the fearlessness that we can walk the path without fear of becoming lost and without fear of any obstacles that will prevent us from completing our path all the way up to Buddhahood, to nirvana. And the lotus part on the throne represents renunciation. So we're renouncing samsara. We're saying no to samsara. We don't want to be distracted by the 3 poisons of ignorance, lust, and selfish desire, or hatred and aversion. We don't want any of those poisons to come into our body, speech, or mind. And so, like the lotus, we're leaving those down in the muck and mud of samsara, and we're rising above them. We're not judging them. We're not fighting with them. We're still connected to them because the lotus is rooted in the mud and muck, but we're rising up above that samsaric suffering into space, into the light of day, and blooming like a lotus does above the water, unstained and unsullied by the mud, and opening itself up completely to beauty and to natural primordial purity. And the sun cushion represents bodhicitta. So just like the sun shines and gives warmth and life and light to everything that lives without discrimination, so does the awakened mind give love and compassion and infinite bliss and joy equally without discriminating amongst anything or anyone that's living as being unworthy to receive those qualities. The sun gives joy and warmth and life to beings that are saints and sinners, to those who help, to those who harm, to those who have awareness of sun, to those who don't have awareness. The sun is still a source of life for all that lives. In the same way, Bodhichitta, the awakened mind, gives joy and happiness and bliss to all beings and wishes it only for them without discriminating amongst them. And finally, the moon part of the cushion on the throne represents this amazing way that everything exists, which is called emptiness, tompani, or voidness, which means things are empty of inherent individual independent nature. Everything is completely interconnected and dependent upon everything else, down to the most minuscule, unseeable level, beyond atoms and electrons and neutrons and quarks, things that we can't even see or imagine yet that will be discovered, still are part of this great, amazing unity and interconnection of life beyond the intellect. And so emptiness explains not only the nature of existence, but also how to create the best opportunities, bringing together the best qualities within that expansive nature. So let's open our Tashi Gatsel prayer booklet and just start with our refuge in Bodhichitta. I don't know how it will sound to say it all together. We can try. If it doesn't work, then people can mute, but we can try it all together. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, until enlightened, I seek refuge. Through merit from giving and the rest, to aid all, may I become Buddha. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, until enlightened, I seek refuge. Through merit from giving and the rest, to aid all, may I become Buddha. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, until enlightened, I seek refuge. Through merit from giving and the rest, to aid all, may I become Buddha. And in Tibetan, it sounds like this. Sangye chodan soki chognam la jangchu bardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi jin soki pe soknam ki jola penjir sangye drupar sho. And the four immeasurables. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be parted from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and hatred. And we'll say that 2 more times as well. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be parted from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and hatred. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be parted from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and hatred. In the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer of the Shakya clan, I prostrate, offer, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer of the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer of the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, forms supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, who are devoted to the moral precepts, the holy field qualified with realizations, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms' atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, the flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death, be delivered from samsara's ocean. So we'll leave those as our opening prayers because we only have an hour session tonight. But these are some of the words that I'd like us to try to get underneath into the deeper meanings. So these words of conditioned experience. The Buddha's great insight was that things are not created. So when he was born, in some of you know, because you've been to India and you've studied about India, that there are many, many millions of gods here. Kind of the Hindu version of devotion is, if something feels divine and sacred to you and it makes you happy and makes you feel like a good person, you can worship it, have at it, you know? So it's not a bad philosophy, but it leads to some pretty funny kinds of thoughts, you know, some ideas that when the Buddha was born, he looked at and he thought, you know, that just can't be right. You know, if there's a permanent God, for example, and then this permanent God is all powerful and is creating everything in this permanent God's world, then everything in that world would have the nature of that same permanent God. And that nature would also be permanent because it would have been created independently and have exactly the same qualities of a permanent God. So things would never change, right? Because if you're a permanent, omnipotent, self-existing being that's only going to create other beings like you, all those beings should have all the same qualities. And the Buddha said, yeah, but everything in this existence constantly changing. There's nothing permanent here. So that his first beginning to try to understand what was going on in the world around him was to investigate it, was to kind of look at it and investigate it through analysis and through sometimes critiques. Critiques not the same as criticizing. So he wasn't judging. He wasn't saying, oh, you know, that's stupid to believe in God or something like that. It's not like that, and it should never be like that. Whatever beings today people feel bring them closer to holiness in their own essence, that's great. Because the oneness that's there, that weaves through all of humanity and all of life, it really doesn't care what we call it. It really has nothing to do with anybody's thoughts about it. There's nothing that can be said about it, really. It is what it is, and it has an essence and a nature that can be known, but only known through a deep awareness. And really not much can be said about it. The more one says about it, the less it's able to really be experienced. But one could say there are ideas that the Buddha came to that one can investigate and then really for one's own knowing, from through one's own experience, come to accept based not just on faith, although there is some aspect of belief through experience that gets built up, but based on reason. So this is the big difference between Buddhism not just being a religion. As a matter of fact, one of the things that drew me to Buddhism was what was written on the board and is still written on the board in Maine in Jolie's room where we used to meet with Ken Rinpoche, which was a quote from the Buddha saying, believe nothing, no matter who has said it, even if I myself have said it, unless it makes sense to your own reasoning. So he's giving us total permission not to just believe on blind faith, not just to take his word for it. He's saying, look, you also, like I had Buddha nature that could be uncovered, you have the same nature and you too can uncover it. And so use your great given abilities to look and to question and to experience and walk the path, because you'll be able to do that. So the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are guides. Their consciousness has attained an insight into the true nature, and they can give us the Dharma, the teachings, but we ourselves have to practice. We have to make those teachings come alive in our own mind stream through our own experience, through our meditations, through our own practice of living good ethics, good virtues. We know when we do goodness, people feel good, they feel trusting of us, and then good things happen. Look at our community. We get connected with goodness. We help each other out. We support each other. Goodness is there when people are in good states of being, in crisis states of being, in neutral states of being. Goodness is there across moving away, being continents away, being states away, being even some towns away now. We still have a connection. In this time of this great pandemic, so many beings are suffering because they have no connection. Really, they're isolated and they have no sense of belonging to community and support. So we see the preciousness of Sangha. We see why it's nice to live in the Dharma, because these things are giving us not only connection and feeling good, but they're helping us continue along our path into selflessness, into being there for others, and then others being there for us. And at some point, it doesn't even matter that we just know who's there, that there are others there. So this is what the Buddha is talking about the selfless nature of the reality, that we are not created somehow by a god somewhere or a goddess, and we're not just random science experiments in the universe showing up. Even Einstein said, God does not play dice with the universe, meaning he actually, Einstein fell more in belief towards Buddhism than theism, but he was trying to say there is order and there is reason to order in the universe that can be witnessed, it is all around us. And so sometimes Buddhism is taken as a science. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is very fond of calling Buddhism these days the science of the mind, because it's coming into the school curriculums here in India. Already in the public schools, over 5,000 public schools are bringing in social emotional learning. Yep, they're encouraging people to investigate more about the inner reality, about the emotions. They're also encouraged to weave that into external reality. How do we create society that's beneficial to self and others mutually? So, it's not just based on faith and blind faith. And then, there's also an aspect of Buddhism that's philosophy. So people who can connect through reason. Philosophy is a very common way to all of humanity to come into deeper knowledge. So from Confucianism, from the Chinese great ancient civilization, to the Japanese, to the Greeks, to the Romans, to the Western philosophy, this is a way that humans have historically used to try to make sense of the world around them, is to come up with ideas and test those ideas against reality. And so Buddha was using that technique as well. He used many. I mean, before he even attained Buddhahood, Siddhartha had to have been a very, very special human being, because he was very, as reports say, very beautiful to look at, very kind, and also very intelligent. He was able to not just role play and say, okay, now I'm going to be a king because I was the prince, and I could be a pretty good king. He was really thinking deeply about, what is the meaning of this life? What can I do with it? And how can I use it to be of the most benefit to others? So he had this idea in his quest already about benefiting all of life, not just his clan of the Shakyas, not just Indian people who were living, the Aryans at the time in India. He wasn't thinking of just benefiting the people alive at that time in his day and age. He was thinking about how to come out of suffering, finding a way that would be beneficial and lasting for all of life forms until all of life forms came out of suffering. Because he looked at life around him and thought, geez, there is karma, there is cause and effect. When I do good, good things will come. If I do bad, bad things will come. And the karma follows, he said, karma follows one the same way the wheel of the cart follows the oxen. We'll use a nice oxen metaphor since we're in the year of the ox now. So, the wheel of the cart has to roll when the oxen moves. And he said, that's how we create karma. When we use our body, when we use our speech, it's a reflection of what's in our mind. And that's what's going to continue to create that kind of karma. So if we use our body for harm, probably our mouth is saying, in my experience, when someone's like, come at me to harm my body, their mouth is not saying nice things. So they're working together, and that's a reflection that their mind's really upset. I mean, luckily, in my experience, my nature is usually pretty calm and my mind is usually pretty alert. And so I've never, that I can remember, gotten in a fight with anybody where I've returned hitting, aggression, maybe a few times verbally saying something back to my poor mother, a little bit arguing, but not really losing control and losing control of the fact that um, if we lose control of our mind, then our speech and our body can really do a lot of harm, really, really a lot. And so the Buddha was talking about how important it is to keep the body, speech, and mind undivided from goodness, because the way we use body, speech, and mind, that's how that's how we're creating karma. That's what he meant about the wheel of the cart is rolling after the oxen. When the oxen moves, the cart wheel has to turn. So when our mind moves in any direction, our body and speech is going to also be same way influenced. So if things that we let our mind get attached or pay attention to upset us, we might be more likely to say something negative about that thing or that person or that situation, right? Similarly, if we let our mind go towards things that we love, that make us feel good and happy, our mind's filled with good, happy feelings, and we might find ourselves feeling, even joy inside, having a physical experience of that emotion. We might find ourselves giving a touch of compassion, whether it's to your loved one or your cat or whomever, your dog. Our body might then be moved by that feeling to show kindness. And let's say it's to an animal, to a dog or cat, and then we say, oh, my good sweetheart, oh, I love you, you're so good. Like people, that's how it goes, right? We feel something good, our body maybe pets the animal, and then our mouth, our speech says something kind. So we're creating body, speech, and mind, karma. Now, sometimes when we just stay in noble silence and we're just happy with our awareness to move through the world and not label anything, not be drawn to like looking for that kind of good and acting out expression of loving kindness or compassion, our mind's also not really thinking anything negative or getting drawn our body or speech to saying anything. It might just be more in a neutral awareness, but that awareness, that's a good time to infuse it still with compassion, to let everything around you know that you would never harm it, that you're just a kind presence there. Not really like a house plant, but similarly, like you're just there, like the plant gives oxygen off to everything. It's not discriminating, it's being beneficial. It's taking your CO2, it's using that. Sometimes like people ask me about being in silent retreat. When you're in your meditation, sometimes you just feel like that you're just a benevolent inner, you're sitting, you're breathing a little bit, but you're not really thinking much, but you're just in a state of goodness, of just good awareness, and that's it, and that's enough. That's very peaceful. So this is what the Buddha is asking us to do, is to really start to investigate how is our mind interacting with our body, with our speech, and how do we develop this sense of oneness with everything that is, but more importantly, that oneness with our Buddha nature that can only and forever benefit everything that is. So there are a few things there. The first one is the oneness of all of life. Well, can we prove that? What do you think? Can we prove it? Let's try. Let's see if we could go back. Let's do it a little scientifically, because I like kind of science and physics also. And if we take as a given the most common theory right now for the physical creation of this planet, which is the Big Bang. In Buddhism, that's there. We talk about a Big Bang creating this universal system, but not just one Big Bang, many, many times. It happens over and over again. There's creation, sustaining, and then degeneration. Degeneration goes to a period of kind of almost a stasis, of like a void of almost nothingness, until something changes again. Ken Rinpoche explained it to me like this, that the world systems get created by all the karma of the beings that will appear within those world systems. So somehow the consciousness energy builds up again, things move, matter comes together, it gets created in a long, long, long period of time, billions and billions and billions of years, then world systems start to come into creation. We can agree, we all have some kind of a physical form. We're not just figments of our imagination. Do you agree? Do you have a body? You have a body. Now, within that physical body, what is it? Did we get it by ourselves? Where did we get our body? Well, we got our body from our mother and our father, but even on a more minute level, from very tiny parts of our mother and our father. Just one little egg and one good little swimmer, the sperm. Not their whole bodies. They didn't need their whole bodies to create us. They just needed the right moment, the right time, that right little swimmer, and that egg being ready to receive it, and boom, here we are. It started. But are we in that same body from that instant when those two started the life? Are we still in that form? No. It's been rapidly changing ever since that instant. How many years ago? And it's only and forever been changing since then physically. So we do have a body, but we don't have the same body. So what's been going on? Like how did we get to this body in between? Well, we needed causes and conditions. We needed our mother to take good care of her body to help bring our whole pregnancy to fruition, to even be able to give birth to us. Lots of babies don't make it the whole way, right? So causes and conditions mean that mother took good care of her body, took good care so our body could come out through her body, and then took good care of our body afterwards so that we grew up into a healthy child, and then even long after that continued to care. And sometimes people say to me, oh yes, but my mother wasn't so kind and blah, blah. I said, but I don't want to hear that. You know, she gave you life. She carried you for those 9 months. She took care of you in the middle of the night when you were a crying little pink thing where no one else cared about hearing your cries, but your mother was there for you. She gave you her body. She gave you the milk. She was the only one rejoicing when you did your first pee-pee on the toilet by yourself. Oh, wonderful, my precious one. Independence encouraged you to grow and nurtured you into becoming self-sufficient. But she was there the whole time. In the meantime, she's giving you the food, giving you the shelter, giving you the clothing. But who is making all those food, clothing, shelter? All other mother beings. I mean, it's amazing, amazing if you think of all the beings we've depended on that we've never thought about. Who built that first house we were even living in when we were born? Who built all the furniture in it? The beds, the carpets, the blankets. Only maybe Cole knows a few people who built his, I don't know. Because he comes from the family of builders. But even then, you don't know, everything, all the food that came across the table, we don't know who grew all it. It's mind-boggling, the deep interconnection. That's part of what the Buddha was trying to point to when he's talking about this oneness, this selflessness of being. All these cells, we drink in the water comes out. Where does the water go? These cycles in nature, we can observe these things, and it's amazing. So we're trying to talk now on the physical level to see the deep. This is what Buddha's talking about, the emptiness, the empty nature of phenomena, causes and conditions, and creating good causes and conditions to come together and continuing to create them all the way up to Buddhahood. So when we're young, we depend a lot on our parents. That kind of dependent arising means we needed others who took care of us. We depended on our parents. They were our first teachers. They provided us all of the necessities of life. As we got older, we started to study. We started to depend maybe on some other ideas of beings that we read about. They influenced us. We started to think a bit maybe for ourselves and had our own ideas, but we still depended on sometimes we formed our own ideas by saying, no, I'm not believing in that. So we still used other bad ideas that we decided we wouldn't go along with. We'd become a conscientious objector to war because war is not a good idea, right? So we still used our own capacity for reason or we met good ideas that we thought, hey, yes, I think all people have the right to love who they want. Homophobia is not good. Then let's agree that opening love up to a wider definition of love is a good idea. And we started to live these things. So we started then to test out our intellectual ideas, but still those are dependent arisings. There's no really independent thought there. All thought is either coming towards something or working against something, but it's still independence upon other thought. It doesn't occur in a vacuum. And then when we met with the teachings of the Buddha, we start to think about what does it mean then to have this oneness independent arising with the Buddha? Well, the Buddha said the difference between nature, like physical nature of bodies or intellectual nature of concepts, is that his insight into truth would not be changing. Bodies are changing all the time. They're impermanent. Concepts and thoughts are changing all the time. They're also impermanent. But the Buddha said the one insight to the deep reality he encountered, nirvana, that is not changing. Because that's the awareness of everything we're talking about now. That's coming into a deep awareness that's able to be present to, deeply seeing and being okay with the real nature of the reality. Are you with me so far? Are we, as Rabina would say, are we communicating, people? I'm going to borrow that line from her because I think it's a good one. Yeah, good. Okay, so I want to read from I found this beautiful book, The Gospel of Buddha, in a little used bookstore in Portland the last time I was there. I didn't even go looking for a book. I just happened to wander in and I like it. So these are some of the sutras of the Buddha. Okay, some of the stories from his lifetime that were written down not during his time and not by him, but that give a good guidance in the sense of how he used different ways of teaching about this kind of oneness. So this one is called One Essence, One Law, One Aim. And the Tathagata, so Tathagata is another way of saying Buddha. That's what he called himself, means the one who's thus gone. So he's thus gone. Where did he go from? He went away from unreality, right? He went out of ignorance and he went out of selfishness and out of hatred. He left samsara. So he's Tathagata because he's thus gone away from the ignorance and samsaric nature. And the Tathagata addressed the Venerable Kassapa, that was one of his early bhikkhu disciples, to dispel the uncertainty and doubt of Kassapa's mind. And he said, all things are made of one essence, yet things are different according to the forms which they assume under different impressions. As they form themselves, so they act, and as they act, so they are. It is, Kassapa, as if a potter made different vessels out of the same clay. Some of these pots are to contain sugar, others rice, others curds and milk, others still are vessels of impurity. There is no diversity in the clay used. The diversity of the pots is only due to the molding hands of the potter who shapes them for the various uses that circumstances may require. And as all things originate from one essence, so they are developing according to one law, and they are destined to one aim, which is nirvana. Nirvana comes to thee, Kassapa, when thou understandest thoroughly, when thou livest according to thy understanding, that all things are of one essence, and that there is but one law. Hence, there is but one nirvana, as there is but one truth, not two or three. And the Tathagata is the same unto all beings, differing in his attitude only insofar as all beings are different. The Tathagata recreates the whole world like a cloud, shedding its waters without distinction. He has the same sentiments for the high as for the low, for the wise as for the ignorant, for the noble-minded as for the immoral. The great cloud full of rain comes up in this wide universe, covering all countries and oceans to pour down its rain everywhere, over all grasses, shrubs, herbs, trees of various species, families of plants of different names growing on the earth, on the hills, on the mountains, or in the valleys. Then Kasapa, the grasses, shrubs, herbs, and wild trees, suck the water emitted from that great cloud, which is all of one essence and has been abundantly poured down, and they will, according to their nature, acquire a proportionate development, shooting up and producing blossoms and their fruits in season. Rooted in one and the same soil, all those families of plants and germs are quickened by water of the same essence. The Tathagata, however, Kasapa, knows the law whose essence is salvation and whose end is the peace of nirvana. He is the same to all, and yet knowing the requirements of every single being, he does not reveal himself to all alike. He does not impart to them at once the fullness of omniscience, but pays attention to the disposition of various beings. So let's use that a little bit to think about this idea of karma and the oneness. So he's saying, that everything has this essence, has the same essence, but not everything can know it at the same time or even in the same way. And that this kind of revelation comes about due to the capacities of the different forms of beings. So we can think of, as I said, animals and all creatures, insects, fish, birds, up to human beings. We'll work with the ones that we know about, that we can see. And we can see that all these creatures have different capacities, and yet they all have consciousness, right? Every form of life has, let's say in these categories, has consciousness. From a tiny little gnat, no-see-ums, they have consciousness. We don't really know what it might be. They themselves maybe don't know what it is, but they have a consciousness. They have life. All the way up to the great blue whale, the biggest creature, has a consciousness. But we don't know what kinds of consciousness. And human beings similarly all have consciousness. And we know consciousness from human beings who can wreak great harm, who have destroyed and sought to destroy humanity due to their own ignorance and selfishness and greed, all the way up to amazing human beings who have won Nobel Peace Prizes, who have led their people, who have only practiced loving kindness, peace, and compassion. Human beings also demonstrate that they have their own nature of consciousness. And so this is why and how karma comes into very big importance, is the way we're using our body, speech, and mind is how we're really evolving our consciousness, enhancing our consciousness. And so the Buddha is saying it's not really the compounded nature that's going to really make sense. That's all being made of the same elements. Like he used the idea of a potter making pots. The earth and the clay is the same. Just like our bodies are all the same. We all have the same kind of human body. It doesn't matter gender, race, skin color, hair color. As human beings, as Homo sapiens, we all have the same organs, skin. We all have the same requirements for life. We all have the same percentage of water making up our bodies. We all have the same physical skeletal structures. In essence, not that we all exactly look the same, but in essence, those things are not very different, the way that they're made up. And so he's trying to point out to us that we get lost by appearances. So we might judge, he was talking about the clay pots being made according to the hands that form them. Well, those hands are our own hands. Our own hands are shaping these containers. We're choosing what kinds of bodies we're going to continue to live in based on how we're taking care of these bodies right now. We're not dependent anymore on our mother to take care of us, although karma really even goes that far down to like what kind of a mother we have. The Buddha saw that we are also quite connected karmically to that kind of birth that we take, the form of body that we have. But after a certain point, our own life is in our own hands. What we're going to do with it, and especially how we take care of our mind, how we take care of our body, how we take care of our speech. We make choices all the time. And so we have to decide what are beneficial choices and what are not. And we have to take the consequences. No one else can take our karma for us. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas cannot take it away. So in this oneness of humanity, we want to think, yes, there is this oneness of connection. Everything has Buddha nature, but not everything is going to be able to recognize Buddha nature. And not everything is going to be able to influence or determine how we use our own Buddha nature. We ultimately, we have that choice. So we can't blame everything on karma. Oh, that one, I have great karma. That one doesn't have bad karma. Karma is not outside of us. That's what I'm trying to explain. Karma is our own body, our own speech, our own mind. It's up to us. And that's actually very good news. And that's also a very different, that's a different divergence from, let's say, theism, where certain people are the chosen people. Well, if you're not one of the chosen people, sorry. But Buddha didn't say that. Buddha said everything that lives has Buddha nature, whether it recognizes that or not. Now, our job isn't to try to convince anyone else of that. Our job, walking the path, is just to take care of our own Buddha nature. It doesn't matter if people believe we have Buddha nature or not. It doesn't matter if they believe they have Buddha nature or not. What matters is if we believe it and we start to bring it out. We develop the Buddha nature. We water the Buddha seed. We bring about the blossoming of all the qualities, right? So we don't have to change the world. And Buddhism's beautiful in that sense of never trying to convert, but still yet recognizing that divine essence in the oneness of all of creation, that essence that is Buddha nature, but not saying it is going to be equally known to all, or that the Buddha wasn't really on his goal was to attain a path that could be followed by others for a long, long time, long after his human existence was done. And that would also lead them to the same enlightenment, to the same nirvana. So that's also kind of a different idea than a lot of the world religions, right? A lot of world religions say, I found the one truth, I have this one truth, and you need this one truth. Buddha just said, I found the truth. He said, there's not 2 or 3 truths, there's just one, and I found it. And Buddhism predates Christianity and Judaism and Hinduism by hundreds of years. So some of you might be thinking, geez, it sounds a little bit like Jesus. You know, it does. But the ideas were already out there. So, you know, Buddha and Jesus would have been friends. Of course, they wouldn't have had arguments because Jesus taught similarly, as I am the light and the way, so are you. He was also teaching the oneness. And then, unfortunately, it got whittled down and things got into power grabs of like, you know, just period. I'm the light and the way, not as I am and so are you. Those things got edited out. So we have to just remember this oneness concept is there. And a lot of the things we talked about earlier, the Greeks had a concept of it. The Confucians had a concept of it. Many of the Vedic traditions, even in Hinduism, like Buddha took a lot of ideas from Hinduism. He was raised on the Vedics teachings and on the Upanishads, which are beautiful philosophies. They have a oneness also. They just happen to explain it in a little different way. But for our purposes, this oneness of humanity means, so what do we need to hone in on? And what do we need to let go of? And what we need to let go of is too much concern for the things that are definitely going to change. Like we talked about already, our physical being. It's always going to be changing. It's only been changing since we started off in the fertilized egg, in the pregnancy. I'll share with you today at lunch, I had an amazing experience. Jetsuma and I went out for a lunch with some nice lay people who are here, and their little baby Pema, who Aransa's had been a long disciple of Jetsuma's, and she was pregnant a few years ago. We were in retreat here, and I didn't even notice that Aransa was pregnant. She was in her early 40s at the time. And so Pema is her baby now, and she's about 2.5, and she's very articulate. They're Spanish, Tony and Aransa and Pema. And Pema was sleeping during lunch, and all of a sudden she woke up, and then she started to eat. And at one point, she pulled up her little shirt and she looked at her belly button and she was saying, "Mio, Mio," like it's mine, it's mine. And then she's asking kind of her mom, "Oh, you have one too, you have one too." And Jetsuma and Sunma Dasel, yes, we all have a belly button. But then she said in Spanish, "But Mama, this is how you fed me when I was inside of you." I mean, she said this, at 2.5. And Jetsuma just said, "Well, yes, sometimes the mind is there and they can still remember that they were inside." And it was amazing, and so the mind is incredibly amazing. And Buddha said the mind is what is the thing that transcends. That's the thing that's going to be beginningless and endless. It's non-physical, non-material. The mind is the thing that is going to create moment by moment of experience, and matter is going to follow that. So we say in English sometimes mind over matter, and that means because mind is the leader. Or as Rinpoche said to me, this whole world is created by mind. Everyone's whole world is created by mind. Everything we experience is created by our mind, and that's also part of this emptiness. Whereas there's a good story that explains this. There could be a vase of flowers sitting in a room, and one person walks in and looks at the flowers and says, "Oh, I love those flowers. They're really beautiful, and their scent is wonderful." And the next person walks in and says, "Oh, those flowers, they look nice, but I can't be too close to them because I'm really allergic to them." So kind of not the same. And a third person walks in and says, "Oh, I hate seeing those flowers. They remind me of the funeral of my mother. Someone brought those flowers." So you see, that's emptiness. The flowers didn't change. The flowers on their side are just the flowers. It's our mind that's projecting and labeling and telling stories. That's in one little example, but we're doing it everywhere, over and over and over and over and over again. And this is what the Buddha saw, is how we're creating our reality. And this is why it's emptiness, because we could use it as flowers, we could use it as snow. People have different experiences with that. We could use it with food, anything. I mean, it's empty of inherent existence based on the object itself having the qualities that we project onto it. The object's just an appearance. Flowers are just the flowers. They're not even trying to be beautiful. They're not trying to smell nice. They're not trying to make someone be allergic to them. They're not trying to give a bad memory to someone's thoughts back to a funeral. Or someone else might say, "Oh, I love those flowers. My boyfriend brought me those on the first date." They're not trying to do any of that. Are you following? Understanding? And so that's why it's so important to watch how our own mind is labeling. This is what the Buddha was meaning by saying, yes, the pots can be filled very purely, meaning we can have a very pure perception of reality. We can say it's all the Dharma Dhatu, and it started off physically as pure expression of creation, then pure consciousness that's just witnessing that nature everywhere. or it could have a little bit of sulliedness. He said the pot could also have a little bit of impurity, which means, yes, the purity's there, but it's not always recognized there. Or it could be very spoiled, which means the mind has become so diluted, it doesn't recognize the purity and it doesn't act with purity. And we know realistically, if we look at our world, that we can see that these things, how they manifest. But still, the most important thing of his teaching is it doesn't matter, because no matter how we see and project, everything by its essence still is primordially pure. There's nothing we can think or that we can do or that we can say that will make it not pure. Of course, we can cover up and make a lot of mistakes through ignorance, through desire, lust, through hatred, anger. We can cloud things up. Like Gatsel uses a good example of water. We can have water that's clear, where at the bottom of the glass all the mud has settled, and we can still see where the mud is and then the clear water is. But if we shake it a little bit, then the mud distorts the clarity of the water, but it doesn't change the essence of the water's purity. The water is still pure. And that is the nature of our mind. Our mind is by its essence primordially pure. And that same purity is the oneness that weaves itself in all these various expressions throughout life. There's nothing we could do to make it impure. And this was the great truth that the Buddha found, because remember, in his day and age, and even today, there's a caste of people, in his time, a caste of people called the untouchables. And even today, those people are still in India. It's against the law to call them that or to treat them that way, but people still do. In other parts of the world, you have the racism, that people just make snap decisions based on skin tone. They can't see the humanity of the person. But it doesn't make their humanity any less valid and less pure. But in the Buddha's time, the whole world was defined that way. Only on labels, only on how whose family were you born into. That's your caste for life. You could never change. Think of how rigid that kind of thinking is. And think of, there are still rigid thinking beings in this world, but it's changed a lot since the Buddha was born. Even though we had the horrible world wars, we still have horrible racism, but it's changed a lot since that time. And it will still continue to change. But in the meantime, our job, the Buddha said, isn't to try to change the world, just change our own mind. We don't have to worry about changing anyone else's mind. That's the good news. It's a relief, actually, because it would be the never-ending project. I'm having a good chuckle with you about that one too, Cole. We don't want to get lost in that. That's why Buddha said, don't get into politics. You're really, as a Sangha, you're not supposed to take sides. You can have opinions about what you believe in, what's right and wrong. Of course, that's why we have morality and we have virtues, and we follow the 10 virtues and stay away from the 10 non-virtues. But overall, we don't get too involved with, getting concerned about the state of affairs with the world, of politics, and of samsara, because that is the way samsara goes. When people are only driven out of ignorance and attachment and selfishness and ego and pride and jealousy and hatred and anger and this side and that side, it's all duality, and it will never have peace. It just can't, because it's against the true nature of unity. So our practice should be to try to catch ourselves staying out of duality, seeing the oneness. And it doesn't mean not having compassion and care. Of course, not at all. It means, yes, may you be happy, may you be free. May all beings never be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all beings only have happiness and compassion and only have joy. Yes, that wish is always there immeasurably for all, but we don't have to get too much engaged with that samsaric realm. We can live simply, quietly, compassionately with those who come into our orbit. We always carry those immeasurable wishes. We remember we need those mother beings. They've been kind to us. We don't know in past lives who they've been, or even in this life. Difficult ones can give us the opportunity, practice patience. Difficult ones give us the opportunity to value Dharma. Oh, we're so glad we have Dharma. You can see who has no Dharma, who has Dharma. We can rejoice that we have our good commitment to ethics. Especially these days, there's so much bad speech, bad ethics. We see the value of good speech and maintaining noble silence. We'll live longer, we'll live more peacefully, learning how to do these practices. So that's what we want to focus on and continue to focus on, is that oneness and how we can continue to bring it into our own practice. Are there any questions from that little passage that I wrote? Was it clear? Pretty clear, the meaning? If you have questions, this would be the moment. You can unmute and ask. So let's use as the takeaway, what we can take away and really follow up on for our practice is, what can we do in this next month between today and to next month's main moment? How can we practice this oneness of humanity? What can we do to bring this clarity, this truth more clear into our day-to-day life? So there are things you can do every meal when you sit down to eat. You can remember everything that's on your plate was growing because of the oneness of the earth and the sun shining on the earth and the rain falling from the sky. And think about all the beings that helped grow that food, that helped deliver it to your plate. And you can think about how you, as a living human being, need this food and sustenance. All of life needs food, and you can just be grateful. That can be one way you can remember the oneness of the humanity and of the life, is just having conscious moment before you take your food to just be thankful that you have it, and to think about really deeply, what is the food? You can even, like, if you like it, think about, this food is really a lot of atoms and things I can't even see, like it's existing on many, many micro levels. And myself, I'm existing on many, many micro levels that in the end is mostly space. You can invite yourself to just get more visually creative with thinking that way. I'm just going to give you ideas of everyday life so you don't have to do anything differently, but you can use your Dharma to be more present, to keep your mind more connected to that oneness. You can use your awareness. You can just stop throughout your day just for a moment, and just once an hour. Jetsuma told me this when she asked her yogi meditation teacher when she was starting as a young nun to meditate, what's the best practice in meditation? And her yogi teacher told her, once an hour, just check the state of your mind. So just stop once an hour. If you can remember it once an hour, that would be great. And just see if you're still in awareness of emptiness and compassion. Emptiness can be the lack of independent existence of everything around you, or it could be the dependent nature. Both are the same way to talk about emptiness. And in that moment, you can connect to compassion to the higher level. You could say, Om Mani Padme Hum, to bring compassion more present into your mind stream, so that you're kind of watering your Buddha nature. You're bringing more compassion for yourself and for everything around you. So you're checking that state of your mind. Are you still aware? Or have you gotten drawn off into connecting with the appearances, connecting with your thoughts, You know, our thoughts aren't the problem. Our problem is we believe our thoughts. Thoughts are just thoughts. The same way that bouquet of flowers was just flowers. It doesn't have any good or bad anything. We label our thoughts as good or bad. We maybe try to stop thinking. We don't have to do that. Our thoughts are just thoughts. So just once an hour, try to become aware. What are you thinking? What's going on in there? Try to maybe just breathing in, breathing out, then putting good thoughts. And then definitely trying to use your meditation practice at least, 15 minutes, 30 minutes a day, whatever you can manage, maybe once or twice a day, to just sit in the presence, aware of your Buddha nature, just sitting and breathing in and breathing out and saying, who's breathing right now? Don't say I'm breathing, say, oh, the Buddha's aware, Buddha's breathing.
And
allowing yourself to really connect with that nature, to really just be present and to say, yes, actually, the one who's aware is the Buddha, the one who's aware right now in this moment. Who else is going to be the Buddha? And to start to really encourage yourself to bring those qualities of awareness without saying my body's the Buddha, I am the Buddha. It's the awareness that has Buddha nature. Okay. I have to close now. Sorry, Heidi, I have to close because I have
two seconds.
Okay, 2 seconds.
That inner peace is the way towards world peace.
That's true. And actually, inner peace, if we have inner peace, we don't even need to worry about world peace. The world could be going to hell and we'll still be at peace. But yes, I agree with you, Heidi. Inner peace is the way to world peace. But still, again, the Buddha never talked about like this idea of the world peace. He was talking about nirvana being the state of true and lasting peace, unchanging. That is the truth he found. And in his time, he didn't try to change into, he never got the world into peace when he was alive. So he never even worried about that. If you can do it for yourself, that's enough. If you do it for yourself,
concept.
If you do it for yourself, Heidi, the world will be at peace. It doesn't mean everyone else is going to transform, but the world in your existence will be at peace. Okay? So let's dedicate and thank you all. And I'm going to go because I have that other session in about another half an hour, but I'm going to meet with the people. And if you'd like to join with the Bodhi Mind Center, and does everyone have the link that they need for that session on the 8 verses of training the mind? Heidi, I sent it to you. Heidi Ho.
I got it.
Oh, good. All right.
Is
Okay,
it on the website? Or
What-
do you
what's
want a special link?
Yes, yes,
is
it
the-
is. It's
the
on
link
the
is on the
website.
website.
I
Okay,
signed up
good, yeah.
yesterday.
So if you don't have it though,
Yeah.
Carla, send me a quick email or send to
Okay.
Janet or Doreen. Maybe it's better to send to Janet if you check in the next half hour, because I'm going to talk with them just shortly before we start.
It's bodhimindcenter.org, and you have the link right to the
Oh,
Zoom
good.
and
Okay,
everything
thanks.
right there. And I
Yeah.
signed
Thanks
up,
to
yeah,
everyone
yeah.
who's been helping out on that end. I really appreciate it because it makes my side of things much easier. Hi, Pranika. Nice to see you, Pranika. Oh, Pranika's here in India. She's down in Mumbai. Okay, so we're going to dedicate on page 25 of our prayer booklet. I'll try to scan and send a copy to you, Pranika. Sorry, or put a copy in the mail. I have an extra one. So we'll say the long life prayers. In that snow mountain encircled land, source of every benefit and joy, may Lord Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezig remain in life till samsara's end. In particular, I pray for the one who knows all the scriptures with the power of his intelligence to have a long life through the solid strength of his mind and his mastery of life, in order to benefit the teachings and all beings with his good wholehearted resolve. Through this virtue, may I swiftly, having gained Guru Buddha's state, place each and every sentient being without exception in that state. Precious Supreme Bodhi mind, may it where I'm born arise, and where born never decline, but increase forevermore. Mig me se we ter chen chen resi, dri me kien pe wang po jam pel yang, du pung ma lu jom se sang we da, gang chen ke pe su yen song ka pa, lo zang drag pe shabla so wa de. May we all attain Buddhahood for the benefit of every sentient being. And in particular, I'd like to dedicate tonight's session, or today's session, this session, to anybody who's suffering from loneliness and isolation, who doesn't have companionship, and who doesn't recognize or feels very separated from humanity, to remember their true oneness with humanity, and that all hearts are truly connected through their Buddha essence and nature, and that we are sending infinite loving kindness, immeasurable joy and compassion to all mother beings everywhere, with a sincere wish, may all be free and happy. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
I'll see you all in the book center teaching. Is it starting at what time is it starting?
In a half an hour, our time.